Well, we know banking's hard and insanely complex, and you'd have to be really crazy to try and create a new bank, wouldn't you? Last year we had Alan from Griffin Bank come to us to talk about testing, and that was a great talk, and that's on YouTube. You should check that out. But this year, following that same theme, we've got another crazy person creating a new bank. Alexey, we're very, very delighted to have you talk to us. It's a real honor. Alexey's the CTO of Kroo Bank, and so Alexey, over to you.
Thank you, Malcolm. Thank you, and it's great to be here. Some fantastic talks to follow, so I'll try to give you some insights from our first 3 years of operating live bank, and I guess maybe a couple of years prior to that whilst we built it. First of all, a little bit about myself. My name is Alexey. I'm CTO of Kroo Bank, CMF24, for those who unfortunately know what it means, but Senior Management Function 24. We are a regulated entity, so a lot of it is going to be about how we deal with that and how we sort of manage the balance between being effectively a startup, pretty much a bootstrap lean startup, as well as the regulated bank. I've been around building various systems for a while. Most recently, I've been flying around between Japan and America trying to connect Japanese cars to American launch satellites before I joined Kroo. But since I have a young family, it's great to be based in one country and building a business in one territory, as it were. A little bit about Kroo Bank, for those who don't know. Our primary product is digital current account. We are a challenger bank, a digital bank. There are a few different names that apply to the likes of us. We are, I guess, similar to Revolut to some extent, but where we're different is that we focus on the UK. We just serve one market quite intentionally. We decided from the beginning that we'll sort of go deep in one market rather than trying to scale out from the beginning. We also intentionally focusing on very simple banking and bringing banking to the basics. We're not trying to add too many features, and we're quite selective about things that we do. Finally, I guess, it's very important for us to offer our customers financial benefits that we believe make them ultimately richer or make their money go further. A little bit of history. So we been operating, started building in about 2018, maybe just before that. We operated under e-money license until 2021. Then we entered mobilization and operated a bank with severe restrictions. Maybe we had 20 or so thousand customers to prove to the regulator that our systems are robust. And finally got an unrestricted license in 2022. And then we launched shortly after our current account, fully regulated, FCA protected, fully featured, and the UX is optimized to simple banking, as I mentioned. From the beginning, it was important for us to make it valuable. And I guess that was the main differentiation. So we launched with a market-leading rate, market-leading fees, as in pretty much no fees for any kind of payment, domestically or internationally. And as I mentioned, focused on the UK. For us, I guess being different also involved being ethical. So from the beginning, we involved in a few charitable projects. We joined Tech Zero from the very start, meaning that we pay a lot of attention to our carbon emissions, and we set targets that we follow. We planted trees for customers join us, and so on. Still to date, we maintain internal targets for charitable project participation, and all our employees do that. Another thing about differentiation, another problem that we try to solve is social banking. And that's one of the first lessons, I guess, that we learned. So when you start up, you can make some plans about what's going to work and what isn't. Social banking hasn't really worked out for us as well as we thought. We spend a lot of time building various tools around split billing, around, I guess, traveling together, paying money together. We still have this. It's frankly amazing. People who actually use it like it a lot. But what we learned is people are not very social about their money. So, kind of Captain Hindsight, probably should have told us this. But, we learned a lot from this. We learned how to iterate over building and learning from features. And I guess before I go talking about architecture, maybe it's worth kind of summarize about how we think about and what it is that we build the architecture for, right? And we're trying to find this balance between being a fintech or a startup fintech, if you were, and a bank. We are regulated as bank, but we are operating on fintech's budget and fintech's teams. And if you're a fintech, you probably want to build your system, your organization to optimize for validated learning, right? You want to try things, see what works and what doesn't, and learn from that, and go quickly. So if you bank, you want to optimize for managing operational risk. So the cost of failing to manage that is far too high. So there are those two kind of things that I guess almost like at the different scale of a spectrum. So finding the right balance is important. So, but more often than not, we have to do both. For fintech, throughout the company, we want to encourage experimentation and ask people to try different things. As a bank, you really want to manage and control change quite tightly. So fintech, as a fintech, we go fast and we fix forward. It's one of the things we still do today. But at the same time, we need to make sure that we minimize impact on operations. So another thing we learned quite quickly is that operating a retail bank means that almost everything you do impacts your customer's life in a very profound way, because money is important, and I guess whatever we do somehow it revolves around money. So if you happen to have a release on Friday and it's a payday and people can't access the money, it is very, very disruptive. So we need to make sure that whatever we do, this impact is minimized. But at the same time, we need to go quickly. So it was an interesting balance to find. So fintechs and ourselves, we try to build for our understanding of the market today, and then throw away things that don't work, and scale up things that are successful. Banks, I mean, I don't want to generalize to bit, but to my experience, a lot of banks build for mergers and acquisitions, right? You either going to acquire someone and grow this way, or you get acquired, right? And a lot of companies are like this. So it's important to make sure that what you do is composable, right? We had a great talk from HSBC, I guess, and HSBC have, it's like 80 core banking platforms. So it's a very different environment from where we are. So we just have one. But finding this balance is also important for us because we also want to grow and we need to entertain those options for ourselves. So anyway, so that's what we arrive at as, I guess, important architecture elements for ourselves to enable all this and finding this balance. Well, first of all, it's kind of almost like goes without saying. Of course, we're cloud native, right? Like not many people build anything new in any different way these days. But For building a bank, it's still surprisingly challenging sometimes to find that right language to talk about risks and outsourcing and DR and all that with the regulator when you just run on AWS. And we run on AWS for all our transactional workloads. We have also decided to abstract all our third-party dependencies from the beginning. And that was not an easy choice, right? Because if we kind of look at the options available to us when we started building this, most banks either buy into a single platform, like a core banking system, and build around this. And others, like Starling, Monzo, Revolut, they would build everything from ground up, right? So they just like almost don't buy anything, right? So we wanted to find, again, a middle ground. And I guess that's going to be a theme around this talk, is like we're always trying to find a balance, right? We don't go to extremes one way or the other. So we wanted to utilize the undifferentiated services provided by other people. So for example, we didn't want to spend time integrating with faster payment system. We don't see ourselves adding value to this. But what we wanted to do is to abstract ourselves from it as much as possible and use a provider that would offer a good service. In our case, that was Kroo Bank. It worked really well for us. Others, larger banks, I guess, would have to take on this expense, which we avoided. But at the same time, what was important to us is we didn't want to integrate between multiple providers, right? So we wouldn't integrate payment provider into a core banking system. We always abstracted those flows. So that gives us ability to, well, first of all, inject our logic into those flows and build our products on our platform. And second of all, change providers. We already have changed our core banking system once. And even though it's always painful, whatever we do and how much you prepare for it, it was possible. And that's, I guess, the testament to this element being important. Microservices, I think it's an interesting one, right? Again, everyone builds their systems using microservices these days, I guess. But for us, I think we, and I'll talk a little bit more about microservices, but almost like we skipped too many steps on this process, and we jump straight into this sort of extreme scale of running microservices, right? So we have hundreds of microservices without too many kind of supporting elements that would allow those scale efficiency. So that's one of the issues that we're dealing with right now. REST, again, it's important, I guess, qualify what we mean by REST, right? And for us, those microservices own resources, and these resources are consumed via REST APIs. But I guess what's a little bit specific to us is we invested in going all the way to, from just calling REST to just HTTP transport, or having explicit resources, or using HTTP verbs. So we also went and introduced hypertext application language for our resources, where we explicitly define with the resource the operations that you can apply on the resource, as well as links to other adjacent resources. So for example, if there's a customer, that's what you can do with the customer, and all these links are embedded in the resource. So if we ever want to move away from this particular microservice serving this operation, or even having this resource, we can do it quite simply. It's a bit of it was great conceptually. We haven't really done a lot with it. Perhaps we will in the future. Perhaps we'll find a reason why we've done it, but so far it's not something that's been extremely useful for us. Event sourcing. Again, as many financial organizations, it's important to establish what the source of truth is. And for us, event is a first-class citizen, and that's the source of truth. Our resources are projections built from events. We can throw away all the resources and rebuild from events. And indeed, we've done it a few times, sometimes in test, sometimes when we had to build a new version of the logic, and we had to go back in time to the very beginning and rebuild those events, and sometimes when we had failures in production. We demonstrated to ourselves that event sourcing is useful to us. But not only that, event sourcing was quite useful when we had to demonstrate to auditors and regulators that our systems are robust, right? And when you build a fintech, you can't build everything up front, right? So everything is kind of proportional to the size of the business. You start with your controls, I guess, not being exactly where you want it to be, or where the regulator want to be, or where the auditors will want to be. So almost like all step of the way, you have to defend and convince people that your numbers are correct and your accounts can be trusted. So having event sourcing and being able to replicate our accounts was very important. Once you have event sourcing, I guess it's not too difficult to make a leap of faith and say, well, I mean, we're also event-driven, so we have asynchronous communication between our microservices exchanging events. So microservices, we jump, as I said, from modular monolith to event-driven and services, which allowed a few things for us, right? So, well, first of all, as we grew through the launch, and kind of one thing about growth, I guess one thing we had to learn is that growth is never easily managed or linear. We had some, internal business plans where you had this gentle slope, the turning into hockey stick, and success, in 5 years or whatever. But what happened is a couple of months after the launch, Martin Lewis mentioned Kroo Bank as the most valuable digital current account in the UK. That means we had some, incredible growth, but we were not quite prepared for it. Having already microservices gave us ability to scale capacity where we needed, and so we had to figure out where we needed to add this capacity. Agility and autonomy was quite important to us. I'll talk a little bit more about this later, but broadly speaking, we have this strong sense of ownership, and we assign this ownership to particular teams that manage microservices end-to-end, from building, running, and operating in production. But we still haven't quite figured out the efficiency at scale bit. So we fairly recently introduced a platform team that kind of builds the platform from the bottom up, taking over some of the shared services, shared infrastructure, and adding this efficiency as we scale. Infrastructure as code was another thing that was incredibly important to us. Broadly speaking, the adoption of infrastructure as code goes like this, right? So first, some individual picks it up, right? And we're using Terraform, so I'm using Terraform's command here. But people start individually describing the infrastructure and running the plans and applies. Then it's adopted across the team, and then once there's multiple individuals working on it, you probably want to source control it, right? And you probably want to introduce CI/CD at this stage. Once you have multiple teams working across your infrastructure as code, you probably want to move away from the shared nothing approach and start introducing some modules and some policies, right, to manage the scale. So this is broadly speaking where we are, and we are moving towards being able to scale it by offering the platform, the self-serve capabilities, as well as the continuous validation. It's an area that we invest quite a lot right now. Maybe some thinking around how we plan to scale this. So our current state is we have a number of modules abstracting common resources. Think about your database, your network, your service. and a relatively small number of policies that control the variability of how those modules have been used. All of the infrastructure is deployed, pretty much all of the infrastructure is deployed by pipelines coupled with the service deployment, microservice deployment. Our goal is to abstract service definition, make sure the service can be described in a very, very simple way, and just mentioning the dependencies without describing the actual infrastructure is required. The tool that we are planning to use for it is specification with Arrow, and I guess the schema with Mali, and a translation layer in Clojure that would turn that schema into a Terraform JSON. That's in our minds, and we already deployed it across a number of microservices. It will allow us to test the infrastructure, to run the unit test, to run regression tests, and be able to move quicker. We should be able to run blue-green migration on the service and so on. Perhaps we can even move to a point where we can change the backend. For example, we currently use ECS as our main compute cluster on AWS. And at some point, we may want to move to Kubernetes, and the goal is to be able to do it without disrupting or without even making this something that the application developers need to be aware of. I'll talk a little bit about the ML and AI really quickly. Basically, I guess currently it's an interesting thing that's happening with banking and the regulation, right? So previously, maybe a year ago, AI regulation is all about safety, right? And as long as you're safe with the way you adopt it, the regulator was happy. This year, they've changed. They are really worried that the UK fintech scene, as it were, is falling behind. And the FCA is really pushing banks and other fintechs to adopt AI more. And I guess they see it as one of the primary ways of introducing efficiency and for UK fintech scene to maintain maybe not dominance, but at least parity with other countries. So the way we approach this, we do it across 4 different activities. So we invest in our strategy and governance, work closely with risk compliance and as well as regulators, as I mentioned. We are partnering with a number of academia, as well as we embedding the AI development across the company, investing in various tools that make it safer and easier to do. One thing that is extremely important for us is to invest in MLOps pipelines. And we ultimately build and acquire AI assets. So we, in collaboration with external company, we launched our Gen AI chatbot, as many other companies do, serving about half of all our customer support queries right now. And we built quite a lot of models in fin-crime, customer support, and unstructured data processing. I will skip on to the very end of the talk. But what I want to say is, real quick, is not on technology, but on processes. Agile is very important to us. But at the same time, Agile kind of comes a little bit at the odds with the way banks typically run and regulate it. What we are really keen on is to make sure that we don't allow the accountability to over-rely on processes, managers, and regulators for accountability. So we actively work on distributing and embedding it throughout the team. a shout out to a book called The Unaccountability Machine, or Why Big Systems Make Terrible Decisions and How the World Lost Its Mind. I think it's quite interesting and important take on the way once you systems, and banks are typically quite large organizations, grow, you start making bad decisions just because you over-rely on processes. So it's important to maintain human judgment embedded in your processes. So I'm not saying processes are bad. Processes are actually useful, very good. But just kind of to illustrate this, this is a picture of a ground squirrel, and this is a story from the book to illustrate how decision-making can go catastrophically wrong. The story goes that in 1999, KLM, the Dutch airlines, received a cargo full of 440 ground squirrels destined for Athens. And there was a mistake in some paperwork, and KLM couldn't send them to Athens. But because they originated from China and they didn't have paperwork for sending them to China, they couldn't send them to China either. So ground squirrels, 140 ground squirrels were stuck in Amsterdam as Schiphol. And somehow, through following the process and working closely with the regulator, or actually multiple regulators, the end result was that, and I'm really sorry for this mental image, but all the squirrels were fed to industrial shredder. So KLM decided that's the best way to resolve this. So we would really like to avoid that. We'd really like to make sure that we don't shred any squirrels, but also don't make any similar kind of mistakes where we do everything by the book or by the process, but the end result is catastrophically wrong. So how we do it? We need to make sure that our staff has, well, first of all, they want to take on responsibility for the outcome. And we focus on intrinsic motivation and basically make sure that people have autonomy, competence, and relatedness, right? And some more practices that we do relate to that. So to make sure that people feel that they're in control of actions and decisions, we work in products and platform-aligned independent squads. So everything we do, we try to make as many decisions as possible by the squad. To build the competence, we keep the squad stable, so allow for people to acquire deeper knowledge in the chosen domain. And for relatedness, we use pair programming, and we still have a weekly tech congress across the whole organization where people can get together and discuss things. Thank you very much.
Any questions for Alexey, but please not about squirrels. Welcome.
You're very inquisitive today, Ben.
What technologies did you use to build the software? There was a little hint of Clojure in there.
Yes. So we, apologies for not mentioning this, but and thank you for the question. Yes, we use Clojure for all the microservices. We've experimented with Java. We moved back to Clojure. We experimented with Ruby for some development tools. We are now adopting Clojure script. So it's nice and simple for us in terms of programming environments and programming language. We have adopted Python for some of the AI and ML kind of workloads, but broadly speaking, that's that.
Thank you for the talk. You spoke about kind of the social features from a product perspective that, in hindsight, maybe you wouldn't have worked on. Are there any particular sort of architectural design decisions that you regret in hindsight, and what would you do differently, to phrase it a bit more constructively?
Yes. So I think we like a very broad kind of thing is like we almost went all the way into this extreme distributed system without kind of working up to that, and then it's a lot more difficult to build those control kind of systems and the and supporting systems whilst you're operating a live bank. Basically, changes a lot harder to make at scale, right? So one regret is that we should have worked up to that. I think the architecture itself, as it is right now, it's working for us. It's great, but it's almost like took longer and took more effort to get there, and some of the problems we still haven't solved.
You mentioned an accountability machine and the problems with that. But earlier in the talk, you mentioned that AI is answering 50% of your customer services requests. And I just wonder how you're thinking about the conflict between those two.
I mean, that's like, you know, the subtitle, I guess, was like, everything is a bit of a balance, right? So choose your poison and whatever. So we, again, as a relatively small, very lean company operating in this day and age, we cannot not use it, right? So we can't just do everything with humans. And another, I guess, lesson discovery was that banking is incredibly manual. A lot of it is still, today, it is quite manual. So there's so many different little differences in the way people want to use your services that you can't think of it or automate it, right? So the use of AI is unavoidable, but we have taken probably a year and a half to build our chatbot. So we ran it in stealth for a long time, and we built to it. So one of the things that we haven't rushed into, it's quite well made, if I may say so myself. So far, we haven't had any issues with it. We monitor CSAT quite closely, so we ask the customers to rate the experience, and we also make sure it's clearly labeled, and at any point they can jump out of this and talk to the person. But the truth of the matter is that people actually like using our bot. So our CSAT is at 96, 97% with bots, and about 80 something with people, right? So people like the bot more. So.
Okay, thank you very much, Alexey.
Right.